I will start. I'll give you a brief presentation about what the green rating project is, and then I will ask my colleague Priya to take over from me and give us the findings. CSE's GRP program is what we call a public tool to leverage change. It's the only, it's one program in CSE where we actually benchmark what is happening in the industrial sector in India, sector by sector, and then we look at how we need to move ahead. But being CSE, we have to say we also set very difficult goalposts. We do not make it easy for industry. We set very difficult goalposts because we believe in India the challenge of industrialization is going to be business unusual. When we push for change, we essentially make sure that we have a rating system. Sorry, my presentation is not coming on. I have to do something. Can you help me?
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay, it's coming.
You have to just say it.
Say
We push for change. We push for change. We have Leaves Award, and if you see over here, we have a one Leaf Award for companies which have 20 to 30% score. Less than 20% is no award, and above 80%, which I must say no company in India has reached that standard yet, is a 5 Leaf Award. The maximum we have ever given has been a 3 Leaf Award till now, a 4 Leaf Award in one case. Our belief, as I said, is public disclosure is a must for credible action. We rate everyone who agree and who don't as well. And this is important because we do not wait for companies to only voluntarily participate. We would like voluntary participation and we give bigger marks to voluntary participation. But companies who don't participate, we still visit the plant, and if you are not allowed inside the plant, we visit outside the plant, we meet different stakeholders, we collect information, we prepare a profile and we send it to companies. And then we ask companies to respond, and many companies, when they receive the profile, have actually decided to participate in this exercise because they realize the credibility of the work that we are doing. We began this with our first rating of the pulp and paper sector in 1999. Dr. Manmohan Singh, former Prime Minister of India, was at that time the leader of opposition, and he was the chair of our green rating project for almost a good 4 to 5 years. And 2 to 3 ratings happened with him being a chair of our advisory group over there. But most importantly, in the pulp and paper sector has been one sector where we can tell you with confidence that we have gone back and revisited the sector, and we have found incredible change. So we benchmarked the sector in 1999. We set goalposts of where we wanted the sector to go. And if you look at this data, you will find that when we started in 1999-98, Arvind and Mr. Lavasa, the water consumption in the paper sector was 200 tons per ton of paper produced. And we had named the companies which were very high. We looked at companies which were actually water prudent, and the water use came back in the next time to 135. And the more recent rating we have done, we have been very happy to see that companies have actually, many companies are reaching the global benchmark today, and an average is down to 68 tons per ton of paper produced. When it comes to elemental chlorine, something that we know that we want paper industry to eliminate, in fact, when we started it was 65 kg per ton, it's now down to 19. Most importantly, one of our biggest issues of negotiation with the paper industry was, paper industry is obviously very desperate to have more access to raw material supply. And they have been asking the government for land. Now, CSE very strongly believes that the government of India must not give forest land to paper industry. And we therefore push the paper industry to say, we want you to go out and buy wood from farmers and source wood from farm forestry and from the open market, so that you can actually push for a reliable market in the country. And we were very happy to see that even though this was the most contentious issue between us and industry, and many industry did not agree with us, we have seen a drastic change between 98 to 2013 in our Lester's rating. We are finding that paper industry is going out to farmers to buy wood as well. We did the automobile rating in 2001. We had, in that case as well, a lot of impact, particularly for better technologies for pollution control. We did the chloralkali in 2002. We essentially, Mr. Lavasa, this was a stage when India was completely dependent on mercury-based cells. And our study brought out just how widespread the chlorine industry was using mercury. And we asked for regulation, and at that stage, the finance minister, and I'm saying this particularly, Arvind, because I'm hoping you'll do the same with thermal. The finance minister gave an incentive to companies to move out of mercury to membrane-based cells. And today, in India, we have a 70% reduction. We also showed huge amount of unaccounted for mercury. Cement, we looked at, we essentially brought out a fact, very unknown, that Indian cement was actually good on energy use, but we said it was very bad on the way it was doing limestone mining. We did steel in 2012, and we've seen changes, but most importantly, when it came to the steel sector, we are finding that the steel sector has actually been poor as a sector as a whole in terms of regulation. And one of the big learnings we took back from the steel sector was that the regulatory systems in India for enforcement have become weaker and weaker over time. And since then, CSE's focus has also moved towards governance and improvement of the regulatory system. Obviously, the rationale now for rating coal-based power sector, it's a core industrial sector. It is set to expand. It is highly resource intensive. It has a very high pollution potential. And for just one fact, it is responsible for more than half of India's GHG emission. But, and this is something that I must share with all of you, it is also a very difficult issue for environmentalists when it comes to coal. As environmentalists, we would like coal to disappear. We know it has very high costs of extraction. Fossil fuel, as I said, is a big issue with climate change. It has pollution impacts. But we at CSE recognize the fact that for some time, coal will remain a major part of India's energy system. No country has actually disengaged. So even as we push for renewables, the question is how to clean coal thermal power. Is it at all possible? What do we do and how? And that brings me to Priyavat, who will take over from me and explain exactly what we found and what do we do.
Thank you, sir. Still not very comfortable. As we were saying that our previous experiences have been quite positive in terms of the impact of the rating. Industries have come forward. They have, sure. I think the mic is a little lower.
It was designed for me, Priyavat.
Yeah.
Your and my heights are different. Yeah, it's on.
This is not yours.
Sanjeev, just have make sure.
It has been effective because the industry has participated. And it means what we've done, research has been done properly. Our research lines, our sample selection, the key areas of performance and environment issues we select, they're all under the guidance of a panel of experts to make sure that this is a very robust rating. These are our panel of experts, and they have experiences across a variety of fields. Dr. Sen Gupta, he's a former member secretary, Central Pollution Control Board. Mr. Bapat, he's ex-vice president, operations Tata Power, and he's managed a variety of operations in Tata Power. Dr. Yabi, a director of power station engineering, BHEL. He's an expert he's not here today, he's in the US, but he's an expert in technology and generation, design, etc. Dr. Avinash Chandra, former professor and Center for Energy Studies, IIT Delhi. He's an expert in pollution control technology. So these are the people who guided this research process. The first step was the sample. We selected 47 plants, around 54 gigawatts. This exercise began in sometime early 2013, and the sample was as of early 2012, which was at that point of time, this was essentially around half the capacity. So we had a very, very extensive coverage in terms of numbers of plants also as well as the capacity. Of these 47 plants, around half agreed to participate. The others declined. Now, as Sunita just mentioned, we rate all companies to make sure it is comprehensive and it's not a self-selection bias. That is, the good plants agree and the bad ones don't. Interestingly and encouragingly, what we found is that the state-owned plants, which are actually some of the worst performers, they are old, the participation was the highest among them. So they were willing to open their books to us. We found it very positive. On the other hand, for the central plants, the story was reversed. Unfortunately, none of the NTPC plants, 6 of them, agreed to participate. The sample selection was representative of the sector as a whole. It was geographically diversified. All the major owners, state, center, private, each was represented in proportion to their size. We had a wide selection of unit sizes. 30% were 210 megawatt, 25% were 5 megawatt. This unit size distribution essentially, okay. This unit size distribution essentially reflected the sectoral India's power sector distribution. In terms of age also, it was similar. Around a quarter of India's power sector is past their 25-year life, which is considered full life in technical terms, although they can work longer, of course. And a quarter was mid-life. This is again reflects the Indian power sector. The last point is this rating was site-specific, meaning that it essentially covered when the coal enters the plant and the generation. Coal mining and sourcing is not included in the rating. The next part is the rating method itself. This was a 2-year exercise. The GRP team went across the country, went to each of the 47 plants, spending approximately a week everywhere to survey the stakeholders if the plant was did not able to participate, and also the plant if the plant was participated. We collected data from all possible sources, primary data from the company, and if the company was not participating from CEA, CERC, Pollution Control Board, we filed RTIs to get all kinds of data. All this went towards making the company reports, which in turn sort of helped us arrive at the main performance indicators and parameters which we look at, helped us decide the weights and the ratings. And these ratings were obviously finalized in consultation with external experts. In the power sector, it is one of the sectors where it is equally resource intensive and also heavily polluting. It consumes, for example, huge amounts of water. So we essentially find almost equal weights, around 45% for pollution and around 50% for energy and resource efficiency. This was the overall picture of the sample weights, or study weights, sorry. Next, we have the key indicators. Within those broad areas of energy and resources, these are the areas we focused on, which are more sort of reflect the sectors or companies' performance. In technology, we chose gross efficiency, deviation from design efficiency, technology, whether it's supercritical, subcritical, what kind of steam pressures, etc. plant availability, GHG emissions. In resource uses, we selected basically water. Energy is already included in technology performance. Water is the biggest one. Water consumption index, sourcing, whether it is fresh water, seawater, water stress, if it is creating, especially if it is located in an area where there is quality water scarcity. Pollution, we had three broad areas. Power sector's thermal coal-based power sector generates huge amounts of ash from burning coal. So ash utilization was a big issue. Ash pond maintenance was another one. Air pollution, we looked at cold storage and handling, which results in fugitive emissions. We looked at particulate matter index. We looked at SOx, NOx emissions. Water pollution is somewhat of a lower issue because power plants can be zero liquid discharge. We looked at water pollution index and we looked at whether they have ETPs, effluent treatment plant, sewage treatment plant, etc. So what did we find? The first one was energy inefficiency. Inefficiency, I'm saying that because it's very low efficiency. India's plants are among the least efficient in the world among all major countries. It's just 32.8% compared to 35%, for example, in China. The difference may seem marginal, but it has a huge impact on GHG, and that's what matters. Each percentage point in efficiency can result in 3 to 4% increase in GHG emissions. The reasons were many. The first is we have data technology. Supercritical plants, which are the later technology, I should say, they offer efficiencies of 3 to 4% higher. In India, 90% of our plants are subcritical, which are the older ones, and only 10% is supercritical. In comparison, Chinese fleet is around 75% subcritical, 25% super, or even newer one, ultra supercritical. In India, ultra supercritical is not being inclusive. Another way to look at it is that how for the size and the age profile, and again over there we seriously lag China. We don't really have a policy push right now to close inefficient plants or to aggressively promote only new supercritical plants. Next, we're looking at efficiency at a disaggregated level. Again, the story obviously is similar. 14 plants, almost more than a quarter, is below 32%, which is particularly low level. Almost all of them are state-owned. In addition, around 12 plants, a quarter of them had efficiency around 36%, which is where the Chinese average is. So this should be the bare minimum in some sense. The interesting point I would make is that the top, in the 36 to 40%, the sort of top category of efficiencies, all except 2 plants use domestic coal. So it's not the fuel choice, which is or technology also sometimes, which is a key determinant. Operations, maintenance, etc. are also important. In the study, Tata Motors was the highest efficiency supercritical plant, 30.1%. But apart from technology, which obviously Indian fleet is handicapped, the issue is that the operations maintenance is also somewhat poor. This is shown from this slide, actual physical design. General guideline is that if a plant is operating 10% below design of higher efficiency levels, it is not a good plant. And in our sample, almost half the plants were in that category. So that's unfortunately, even some of the newer plants were performing in that range, meaning the efficiency more than 10% for design. MP state-owned plant and BC import had efficiency which was 20% more than design. The impact of poor maintenance is also felt in availability. Forced outages or for that scheduled maintenance. Normally the benchmark is that basically around 15 days is a good practice. And everything, but in our sample, just one plant met the threshold. 11 plants had a staggering 2.5 months outages, forced or scheduled. So, and these are annual averages, so which is really bad. Average outages for the sector was almost 1.5 months. So, as a sector as a whole, 87% seems fine. Availability, when we look at in terms of number of days, doesn't look that good. A direct result obviously was low capacity utilization. There are other factors, external factors too. Coal production has been stagnant. to a certain extent, there are evacuation bottlenecks, but availability has played a role in PLF. And the other reason which we feel what has happened is that the demand or supply has exceeded in some situations. We're probably growing too fast, and coal plants are not being used very efficiently. This is another finding, and I think Steve will go more into this. The low efficiency has a direct impact on carbon dioxide GHG emissions. Coal-based power plants are responsible for half of the country's GHG emissions from combustion. So cutting it is critically important. Our sample average was 1.08 tons of CO2 per megawatt hour. This was 14% higher than even China's. Next, we come to land use. To a certain extent, the older state plants have more land, it's a legacy issue. But one issue is that 40% of the land of a power plant is used for ash disposal. So that really, I bet, is a problem. The second thing, of course, the newer plants also use the land far more liberally than ASCA guidelines of 1 acre per megawatt. The second more resource is the water. In India, power plants are a humongous user of water. They withdraw around 22 billion cubic meters a year, which is around half of India's total domestic water needs. And Indian plants are on top of it, obviously, to a certain extent, inefficient water users. The average was 4 meter cube per megawatt hour, which is almost twice what China's and US. Some plants use as much as 10 meter cube. The two main uses of water for cooling, where you don't circulate water, the plants, a lot of plants are also cooling also. That's one. The second is ash handling. Lots of plants basically use water to dispose ash and use very thin slurry to dispose ash. One reason perhaps is that we're not paying enough for water. Some plants pay as little as 10 paisa per meter cube. At the top end, it was 20 rupees per meter cube. Rajasthan, for instance, charges only 70 paisa per meter cube, so this is what CSE is. So perhaps tariffs would be one answer. Power plants can be zero liquid discharge, but around 70% do not really recycle, or at least recycle not completely as it should. Some plants are doing an excellent job, but they have zero liquid discharge, they have RO systems, but by and large, the water was being discharged. 20 plants were found discharging ash into slurry into water bodies, and this is a toxic impact. This is a somewhat serious issue. Given that we have an ash problem, we use a lot of coal with lots of ash, so there's nothing to do about it in terms of generation. But in terms of utilization, we have an issue. The norms are there. Norms are asked for 100%. To a certain extent, there's a problem. The companies don't have the avenues to really use ash. The cement plants, etc., may not be located close enough. But right now, the situation is that 53% of ash in a study was being used. 3/4 of the plant were unable to meet the target of ash utilization. The final pollution issue is air pollution. We have fairly lax norms of particulate matter, 150 to 350 mg per MMU. China's is only 30. In addition, a lot of these plants are not really being able to comply with these norms. And this is our assessment because the data is not very clear. We assess that 85% of the state-owned plants were in violation. Sorry, 55% of total plants were in violation of particulate matter. Bulk of them were from state-owned plants. We don't have SOx, NOx, or mercury norms. And in terms of ambient air quality, there are 7 plants, which out of the 47, which monitor ambient air continuously. The final thing is the enforcement. We found that the Pollution Control Board have noticed some of the issues. They have sent show cause notices, etc. But enforcement is poor. And one reason is, of course, the power needs. You need power, and so shut down the plant, close them is not necessarily a option. This is the overall analysis of our 2 years of study. We selected 60 parameters, and it's been a fairly exhaustive study. Now,
Yeah.
so now I think we'll release the book, and then next go to the ratings for the top class.
Yeah, release the ratings as well. Thank you, Priya. Dr. Sab, can I request you to come out there, or should we? Can we release it here?
Yes,
only?
release
So we'll release it here. Just give copies to everyone. Yes, Dr. Sab. Can see? I'll help Dr. Sab. Priyavat, Sanjeev,
You all can come.
please come. Sangeeta, all your hard work. Please come.
And then,
And then the rating. Then the scroll. Sir, you have to unfold the scroll. We have a very old-fashioned way of doing it. And Sanjeev will show the full scroll after he announces the top three.
yeah.
So, the most awaited moment, we are here to announce the top three performers in the entire sector. So, let's start with the third best environmental performer of the sample. Some of them might be guessing. Let's have the first one. Is Trombay Thermal Power Station of Tata Power Company Limited. Please be I would like to request Dr. Y.K. Saxena, Chief Sustainability Officer of Tata Power,
I have
to
received
receive
cement
the
also
award.
from it.
Very good. Very good.
Some of the few points that the plant has, how this plant has performed is one of the highest availability plants, the complete dry ash handling and 100% fly ash reuse. The coastal plant, so the freshwater requirement only for domestic use is 0.5 meter cube per megawatt hour compared to the global, compared to the Indian average of 4 meter. Average efficiency of the plant is 34%, and they have the pollution control for SOx emission, FGD, which is only few plants have in the sector. So the next one. So the next one is Torangulu Thermal Power Station or JSW Energy Limited. I would like to request Joint Managing Director of JSW Power to receive the award. So the plant scored 49% in the sector, the second best. The average efficiency of the plant was definitely very good at 38%. With 91% availability, plant has 94% of PLF. It's one of the most water efficient plants in the sector with a 2 meter cube water consumption per megawatt hour, and is a zero liquid discharge plant. It's one of the few plants which has an RO system for effluent treatment. Average ash use is there with this plant. Gainful use is definitely limited and needs improvement. FGD system is not available in the plant for SO2 control that may be required to improve. So now the big thing, the last one, the best performer of this sector is Bajwa Generating Station of CSE Limited with 52% score. I would like to call on the stage Mr. Sanjay Chakraborty, the Executive Director of CSE, and his team. Please come on the stage and receive the award from our audience.
Very good. Very good.
Wonderful.
Dr. M. S. Swaminathan and the distinguished guests.
Careful.
Come,
Take
come,
it.
come.
Yes, but they need to take a photograph. So
You also put your hand there. It could be budge. See.
Budge. Little budge.
thank you.
It's not over. We have two more. So the special.
But explain this, first.
So this plant, definitely I would like to share a few good things with this plant. The plant is in Pujali, located in Pujali district, which is water abundant, but still the plant has made commendable effort for water conservation. It has complete dry ash handling. For ash handling system, they have also bottom ash dewatering system to save water, 100% fly ash reuse, and gainful reuse, that is in cement plant and brick making, is nearly 76%, one of the highest in the sector. They have HCSB system also, and pneumatic transport system. They also supply ash directly to the barges in the river that takes the ash to the Bangladesh for sale. Efficiency is better than the average at 35.7%. One of the highest availability plant is 93%, but needs SO2 control system FGD in place. But the plant, despite being an old one, have successfully met 50 to 75 mg per NMQ, milligram per NMQ norm successfully. That's commendable. Now the next stage, we have two special categories where we have plant for best water use is Surat Thermal Power Station of Gujarat. I would like to call on the stage the head of the plant, general manager of the plant, Mr. D.K. Roy, to receive the award from our distinguished guest, Ashok Lavasa, the secretary and
It's one and the same. Thank you.
And the last one is the best in energy efficiency. Again, I would like to invite Dr. Y.K. Saxena to receive the award for Mundra Ultra Mega Power Plant. From Arvind Subramanian, the Chief Economic Advisor of Government of India.
You get efficiency of it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Very good. Congratulations.
So now the full report of the report card of the entire sector. We have 4 3-leaf awardees. The fourth one, 3 we have already seen. The fourth one is again from Ratnagiri Thermal Power Plant of JSW Energy Limited. I would like to congratulate again Sagar sir. And 7 plants have 2-leaf awards, and 16 plants got only 1-leaf awards. But we still have some plants, not some, is definitely bigger proportion, which has no leaves award and perform less than 20% of score. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll now ask Chandrabhushan to give the way ahead, and then ask the companies to also come and help us to see how you see the way ahead.
Thank you, Sarita. Welcome all of you. I think it's important to get a summary of what we have talked about here. Priyanka did touched upon some of the issues, but I want to give you a sense about what this sector is all about. When we started rating this sector, frankly, we didn't have a sense about the ecological footprint the sector has. In fact, you can put thermal power plant on one hand and rest of the Indian industry on the other hand. That's what this sector is all about. It uses 70% of all the water used by industrial sector in India. 70%. We used to think pulp and paper sector is the most water guzzling sector. But look at thermal power plant. 70% of total fresh water withdrawal in this country happens because of thermal power plant. 70% of coal consumption. But the most, the shocking figure when we started adding up the numbers was with respect to pollution. 60% of particulate matter emissions from the industrial sector happens from coal-based power plants. 40 to 50% of SOx emission, 30% of NOx emission, and more than 80% of mercury emission comes from one sector, that is coal-based power plant. If we really want to clean up industrial sector, the first priority has to go to coal-based power plant. If we really want to reduce the ecological footprint of industrial sector in this country, coal-based power plant must get priority. But there is a mismatch. You have such huge environmental footprint, but there are no standards. And that's a glaring mismatch that you will find. And other than particulate matter regulation, which as Priyavat said, is lax, we don't have SOx standard, though it contributes 50% of total SOx emission, no NOx emissions, no mercury emission norms. In fact, there's a very glaring mismatch between regulation, environmental footprint, and where we need to go as far as coal-based power plant is concerned. The other interesting finding was, the three ultra supercritical power plant that we rated: Tata Mundra, NTPC Sipat, Adani Mundra. They were not in top 10. In fact, the top rated supercritical plant, Tata Mundra, was ranked 10th. And if you look at it, you look at the gross efficiency and you look at PLF. We are not using our most efficient stock for power generation. The plant load factor for Adani was 52%, Sipat was 68%, and Tata Mundra was 74%. In fact, if I would add newer plants, even if subcritical, you will find that most of the new stocks are actually performing at a much lower plant load factor. That's another key finding that we had. The third is cost and regulation. Whenever we talk to industry, we are told that if you put stricter pollution norm, it is going to cost. You will have to pay more tariffs. That's what I am told all the time. But our estimation is, even with the global best pollution control technology, thermal power plant tariff is going to not increase by more than 10%. We think, and I'm going to use a little strong word, it's a bogey to say that pollution control is going to increase tariffs. The second key finding is our regulatory institutions don't have ability or tools to enforce standards. And therefore, the last slide of Priyavat essentially said, we know there are problems, but we can't enforce simply because you can't shut thermal power plants. You need different tools. You don't have those tools to actually enforce norms in thermal power plant. And secondly, regulation is not going to be the only thing. You need incentives, you need promotion. But the fact is, coal-based power is going to increase. And that is something that we very clearly understand at Center for Science and Environment. Electricity demand is going to double. In fact, our electricity consumption per capita is one of the lowest in the world. 25% of households in this country don't have access to electricity. And coal is projected to meet most of the demand. In fact, we are going to double our capacity, coal capacity projected from 2012 to 2022. And therefore, our coal requirement is going to increase from about 600 million ton to about 1.2 billion ton by 2022. Which means that we will have to increase our transport infrastructure, but we will also have to increase our coal cleaning capacity. Unfortunately, we have very poor coal quality, and therefore we need to increase our infrastructure for coal beneficiation. If we are going to use 1.2 billion coal for power consumption, our water consumption is going to go up, our land requirement is going to go up, there will be massive increase in pollution, and all these data is there in the book, I'm not going to go through it. Our ash generation is going to go up. The fact of the matter is, there's 1 billion tons of ash right now lying across the country in the ash pond of more than 100 thermal power plant, 1 billion ton. In fact, the second largest waste stream is generated from thermal power plant. The first is mining sector. 1 billion ton of ash that is there. And by 2022, we will be generating, if all these plants come up, something like 300 million ton of ash. So what is the way forward? In fact, it's obvious what I'm going to say. We need strict norms. We need norms for water. We need increase in tariff. These are obvious things that this study comes out with. Okay. We will need policy and regulatory changes. For example, we need to change the way we look at fly ash. Regulation is not going to ensure that fly ash will be used in this country. We need massive promotion and incentives to make sure that a brick kiln uses fly ash rather than soil. Regulation is not going to work, and we have seen this. In fact, if you draw a 100-kilometer radius around all the thermal power plants, no one need to have brick based on mud. That's what, just draw 100 kilometers, radius around each thermal power plant, each and every brick made in this country should be made with fly ash. You can do it. In fact, we wanted to check whether it can be done or not. This is what the map looks like. Or if an inefficient plant, we need a policy. We need actually environmental ministry to give incentives for older plant to be retired. Right now, old plant tell us that if I go to environmental ministry to say that I'm going to scrap this plant,
Okay, environment ministry,
pollution
pollution.
control board, to scrap this plant and get a new plant, I'm told that you can't have a new plant here. So we need regulatory changes also which incentivizes old efficient plant to be retired. And of course, one key point is we need to look at the way we put tariff on coal-based power plant. We have something called as merit order dispatch, in which the cheapest power plant, the power plant producing the cheapest power, gets access to the grid first, which means a lot of old and inefficient plants actually have first priority on the grid than efficient plant. And we need to look at merit order dispatch much more carefully. But this is going to be the map of India in 10 years' time. You are going to have cluster of power plants. Chhattisgarh, with the current capacity is about 8 gigawatts, we are going to add 30 more gigawatts. That's what environmental clearance have been awarded. If you look at Orissa, we have 6, we will add 17 more. Andhra Pradesh, we have 10, we are going to add 26 more. If this is going to be the map of India as far as coal-based thermal power plant is, then we need a different way to do environmental assessment. The current plant-by-plant environmental assessment is not going to be sufficient. We have to look at regional carrying capacity and have separate norms in areas which are likely to get critically polluted. We are going to add 55 gigawatt of coastal capacity. We don't know what will be the implication on marine biodiversity. 55 gigawatt, half of what exists today, in future will come on our coasts. Okay. And lastly, our pollution monitoring and control needs to be enhanced significantly. You know, there's a lot of talk about online monitoring. I think online monitoring will only be successful if there is someone to go and check whether those online monitoring is working or not. Okay, so online monitoring will not happen everything on computer. So we need massive improvement, institutional strengthening, and multiple tools to enforce norms. Let me end by saying that we need to do all the above and more. But I think we need to discuss coal. It's important for this country to discuss coal. Somehow we don't want to discuss coal. We have such diametrically opposite view on coal that no one wants to discuss coal. No one wants to discuss what will be the role of coal to meet the future energy need of this country. And I think that discussion is something which must start now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Siri. Mr. Chakravarti, if I can now invite you to give a few words. Essentially help us to see how your management, how you see the way ahead.
Please.
Like most of the thermal power station, few years back, we were in reactivity, where we were mainly trying to remain within norms. But about 10 years back, we have decided that we will change our mindset and act proactive. And we have seen the things have changed from that time. Everything has changed. Previously, we were concerned when pollution control board, the date in which pollution control board will come, what is happening must be under carpet. We were like that at one stage. But when we change our mindset, everything has changed. From that, we could engage all of our person with a single goal of protecting environment. We openly made environmental policy and declared it throughout the organization that we will consider environmental protection as integral part of our power generation. And in no case, any deviation will be allowed in that concern. And gradually, afterwards, in many fields, we become number one. At present, from none of our power stations, not a single drop of water goes out. All process influence and reuse internal. We use 100% of our air. Even we have our own pontoon in our river, from where the barges goes to Bangladesh cement plant. This is an innovative thing, and we have given cheap land to entrepreneur to make cement factories, the block factories, and they are utilizing those. Our in-house standard every year, along with the production standard, we set up in-house standards of environmental norms, and our internal standards are much more stringent than the normative figure. It is in the range of 50 ppm, 50 milligram per normal meter cube, and our Boypet power station is the first thermal power station in the world to receive certification from UNFCCC as per Kyoto Protocol to trade carbon trading. And that we continuously strive for betterment of environmental standards, and gradually we have seen the Pollution Control Board, who were considered as watchdogs, now they have become partners. Continuous monitoring of parameters are now being carried out simultaneously at their office and my office. Not only to my office, at their office. They have made it open, online, and they feel happy with it. Now they don't come to see whether any water goes out, and because they know it cannot. And they also feel proud of it that jointly we have come up to a point when they can showcase us to all of others. And I have seen the journey I am in the organization for a long time, so I have seen the journey of the old condition and the present condition. Actually, it gives happiness to all. That's the main thing. So I hope with the change of mindset, Indian power scenario will change. Thank you.
Please, no, Mr. Kishore, please let me manage this, please. I'll lose control completely otherwise. Please give me some support on this. I will now ask Mr. Sagar to come. Mr. Chakravarti, I visited your plant as well. Mr. Chakravarti, I visited your plant as well and we're very impressed, but there is some work to be done still. And we will look forward when we come back, and I hope we will re-rate your plant, that we will see the fly ash system that we saw even further improved. So we look forward to that. Mr. Sagar.
Let me begin by complimenting Sunita and CSE for bringing the thermal power sector under the purview of power ratings. You know, given how KGB people are about sharing our environmental data, I'm sure it must have been a very daunting task. And I was thoroughly impressed when I saw the details of what you really got into. I did not realize it was such a long exercise.
Very detailed. Very detailed.
You know, the public disclosure of this data is certainly going to make even people like us who will be rated on top to think about what we've not been doing. And this will certainly help the making the sector more environmentally conscious. At JSW, however, you know, being environmentally responsible has today become a sort of a part of our normal working. It probably started with the passion for, not for environment, but for making our plants more beautiful. And from there, we started increasing our green cover, we started cleaning up our plants, and slowly we started realizing that being environmentally conscious, as CV said, does not cost a lot of money. Little tweaking here and there not only makes you environmentally responsible, but it also makes our plant looks better. In fact, something which we like to boast of is that at our industrial complex at Vijayanagar, we planted so many trees that Dr. Irani, a few years back when he visited the plant, told Mr. Jindal that, Sajjan, you don't have a steel plant, you have a park with a plant in it. We planted almost about 3 to 4 million trees in that plant. I think that's where it started and that's where we are today. However, I would certainly like to say a few words about what CB had raised in his presentation. And while I agree that the thermal power industry is a highly pollutant sector, and CB was fairly passionate about his views on the coal power generation and the amount of damage that we are doing to the environment. But I would sort of request your indulgence, CB, and to also consider that for a country like India today, do we seriously have an alternative? You are a country which is not among the richest countries in the world. You are sitting on 300 billion tons of coal. Fortunately or unfortunately, you are sitting on very poor quality coal.
True.
And let me assure you that washing is not the answer, because you are simply shifting that ash from one area to another. The ash is going to remain there in the Middle East or whatever in the rejects. So we have to find a way of utilizing that ash more than trying to wash it and thereby increase the cost. So these are some of the things that we will have to ponder, but I seriously don't see this country going anywhere away from thermal power generation, at least for the next 50 years. So given those circumstances, it is I think becomes the duty of all of us to, the environmentalists on one hand and the we as generators on the other, to find ways in which we can reduce our impact on the environment without necessarily, or as far as possible, without increasing the impact of our efforts on the cost of power, because in India, our people still can't afford a lot of expensive electricity. So with those words, I'd like to once again thank Sunita and CSE for recognizing our efforts, and I would like to assure you people that given the public disclosure of this data, we have no choice but to improve.
Thank you, Mr. Well put. Mr. Saxena, if I can now ask you 2 awards, Tata Trombe as well as Mundra for efficiency. How you see this and the way ahead?
Good evening. I would like to say something about the green rating. This is my 4th association.
Yes, I do.
I started with chloralkali cement. We did very good when I was with Ambuja. I participated for chemical when I was with Jubilant. Somehow we couldn't finalize it because of the small sector. People were not coming forward. And why I would like to touch that part also. And lately the thermal power. Hopefully this is the last award for me for innovating in April. And maybe next year green rating I will be more like a mentor.
Thank you.
So coming back to Tata Power. Thanks to the management, we have a strategic intent. I agree with everybody that India cannot survive without coal. But same time, Tata has decided that we would like to produce 30 to 40, 25 to 30% for green and cleaner sources. As when today we are 38.6 and we feel proud for our this effort. Why people are not participating? I think when we go for sustainability reporting, India, about 70 corporates are doing that. This is one step we can learn from GRP questionnaire also. If we can do this exercise again for our own plants, I think we can improve it day by day. And after 5 years, when the CSE will do this, I think we all will be about 50% of what we are presenting. We just feel that we should not give the information to an NGO. Same time, as you mentioned, I think when a pollution control person is coming at 12 o'clock, and non-political or political chairman, we just say, please come, and we say no to CSE. I think we have to improve this area. At Tata Power, our ambition is to go beyond compliance. We are working in this direction. Many milestones we have achieved, and we will continue to do so. And I think there is a need, as everybody mentioned, and I think David also, there is a need of strengthening a state pollution control board. Because I was in CPCB, I know. That time when I had no idea about how to bring the BOD 30, and I used to give NOC for retail units to bring the BOD 30. I think time has come. We should organize some courses on sustainability reporting, ISO, these green rating for pollution control board at the inner office of the ministry also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. I think clearly what we've heard from all three is that there are challenges, but whether it's 2050 or 50 years from now, I don't know what our future use of coal will be. But I think all of us agree that whatever the use is, it cannot be sustainable unless we substantially clean up. So I think that's really what the challenge is. And that brings me to Mr. Lavasa, the man who has a lot of tough work to be done. So thank you for being here, firstly, Ashokji.
Dr. Swaminathan, Dr. Subramaniam, Dr. Sunita Narayan, and friends. The problem with Sunita Narayan's green rating is that it leaves many people red-faced. In fact, I was recalling as college students in Delhi around 1970, during the 70s, two instances which came to my mind when I saw the photograph which was on the cover of this book. One is that we used to spend, and I used to live in Faridabad, which is adjoining, number of hours as college students during the day and night without electricity. And in the night, I mean, there you could recall so many days when for 4, 5, 6 hours there was no electricity, and we would wet our bed sheets and try to just somehow beat the heat. And the second distinct recollection is that sometimes the thermal power plant which is located in Faridabad, which is now closed incidentally, they would let out some steam, and there used to be such a huge noise that for 2 or 3 hours, till that time the steam was being let out, we used to wonder whether we are better off without electricity or we are happier with this steam and noise and all. And I also remember that Melville DeMello, he used to do a program called Perspective, which used to be telecast on Doordarshan on every Friday. And in one of the programs, he did a story on the Indraprasth power station. And he interviewed some people who used to live in Sundarnagar and Defense Colony. And they showed him how they wash their clothes in the morning and hang them outside to dry. And by evening, a lot of soot used to gather on the clothes. So if Dr. Sunita Narayan had done a rating in 1970s, no plant would have crossed 0 leaf.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But today, many plants have. And I think that is the direction in which we are going. So rather than feeling very discomforted by the fact that things are not improved the way they ought to have, I would feel that there is a certain direction in which it is possible to go while meeting the huge energy requirement of our people. Chandrabhushan said that our per capita energy consumption is probably 33% of the world's average. And I remember that, incidentally, I have worked in the power ministry for 3 years and I was executive power in my state. So I don't know whether I'm going to talk about electricity or ecology. I remember that when India became free in 1947, we used to produce 30 million tons of coal. And we had 1300 megawatts of power generation capacity. 1300. In 1992, when the liberalization era started, economic reforms, I think India had a capacity of coal-based power of some 42,000 megawatts. That time we used to produce 300 million tons of coal. In 2015, the coal production would have just doubled than 300 million. I don't know if it has reached 600 million, probably not. But our coal-based capacity from 42,000 is almost 160,000. So it goes without saying that the path that we have pursued somehow has made us more and more dependent on coal. The hydel component, which was supposed to be 40% of our energy mix, is now less than 20. And for reasons that we need not go into now, there was a time when international funding on hydel plants had stopped. Because we were told that hydel power locating generating stations in the hills would lead to a lot of damage to the ecology, had huge problems of rehabilitation, resettlements. The Himalayas are very fragile. And so the hydel capacity growth has slowed down. But the demand of energy of the country and its economy has grown tremendously. And even when you talk about demand growing tremendously, you keep in view the fact that there is a huge, sizable population which still doesn't have access to electricity. But all in all, I think the point which needs to be understood is that while we pursue this path, and there are projections that we need 8 lakh megawatts of electricity capacity by 2032, we do also recognize the fact that if we continue to rely on coal, then the problems of pollution, etc., would also be quite huge, and we need to handle those. I do, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the Ministry of Power, but I do know that the findings which have come from this study require a lot of attention, both on the part of the Ministry of Power and also on the part of the Ministry of Environment and the State Pollution Control Boards. Some of the action perhaps has already been initiated, whether it is by the Central Electricity Authority, who are reviewing the norms of per megawatt land requirement, who are reviewing how water efficiency can be improved in the power plants. And there are already many thermal plants in India which have shown very good practices, whether it is in terms of power consumption, whether it is in terms of auxiliary consumption, whether it is in terms of water use, or even land use. In fact, you have a very interesting case in one of the districts in Haryana where 2 plants located right opposite the road. One of them has used land quite liberally, the other very economically. And the moment you enter the premises, you see that difference. So I think that needs to be done. But I will say one more thing and then perhaps conclude that it is, to my mind, not a proper way of looking at power sector if you only look at the environmental side. The power sector in India has to be seen in its complete perspective. The points at which the power sector is regulated, the points at which it is left to the mercy of the market. And it is a paradox in our country that in a sector where most of the input costs are not regulated, the tariff, retail tariff, is regulated. And therefore, there is a situation in which many people are not able to complete the revenue cycle, which is what is leading to a lot of pain in the sector. Equally, we need to move quickly from the cost plus regime to the competitive regime. And when I say the competitive regime, it is a regime which is based on transparent bidding parameters. Only if you have a viable and transparent bidding framework, then you will be able to discover a price, then you will be able to put in place a regime where the power producer has no option but to be most efficient in utilizing all the resources that he does. So we need to look at these aspects equally. There is a national mission on enhanced energy efficiency, and if I recall, there are 137 thermal plants which are identified as designated consumers that must meet their target of improving their specific energy consumption and bringing their energy efficiency. So I think that target is there for them to meet. All these measures will have to be taken together, and at the same time, there is a need for us to introduce some of the norms which perhaps have not been hitherto introduced, tighten some of the regulations. That need is clearly there, and the CPCB is already working on some of the norms which will be announced shortly. So those things are there, but one thing which becomes clearer is that these ratings have actually gone beyond the norms. And that, I think, is the way for the future. It is not enough for us just to meet the norms. We have to excel. We have to do better than what the regulations require us to do. Only then we can actually clean up the whole place. And in the process of environmental regulation, maybe 40 years ago, there were not so many environmental related regulations. They have increased. They will increase further as our awareness and sensitivity and scientific development takes place. So what is the way to enforce all these norms? Is it only by, yes, it is important to have rational, sensible regulation. But the regulations cannot be enforced merely by an army of inspectors who will come and look at the way you are doing things. Eventually, it has to be based on self-regulation. It has to be based on responsible enforcement, which companies, as a part of their corporate policy, have to adhere to. And I'm sure the way the paper and pulp industry was cited as a good example, where a lot of good things have been done. Similarly, the power sector would take certain steps, and I'm sure next time around, whenever these awards are announced, there will be many more companies, many more thermal plants, which will not only reach the 5-leaf, but also aspire and probably persuade Sunita to have a 6th leaf.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you very much, Arvind. If I can now request you. Clearly, efficiency, economics, as well as environment in this sector has to go together.
Good evening. I'm really honored to be here. I don't know why I'm taking part, but I'm honored to be here in the presence of so many illustrious people, Dr. Swaminathan, Mr. Lavasa, Sunita, Chandrabhushan, everyone else from CSE. See, I'm not an expert on coal or thermal or any of these things. I know a little bit about climate change, a little bit about economics and broader issues. So let me make about five points. Point number one, I think we are still a very low per capita energy consuming country. And, I think we have to start with that point that our energy needs have to be paramount. We are well below international norms, and so anything that really compromises with our ability to have energy access, especially for everyone, cannot be seriously on the table, nationally or internationally. Point number two is something that came out in the presentations and something that Ashok also emphasized, is that a lot of change is happening in the sector. So I think the issue is not change, but really the pace of change and also what kind of benchmarks that you want to set. And clearly, I think the pace of change has to accelerate. I think no one has any doubts about that. But I think as an economist, what I always think about in doing policy and stuff is how will change happen in this space. We say we must do this exhortation, etc. But that's all very well, sounds good. Self-regulation, it's kind of appealing, but someone said self-regulation is to regulation what self-praise is to praise. It's a little bit tricky. So I'm not sure whether I have complete faith in that. But I think it's important. So how is change going to happen? So if you can you put up that last way forward chart that you did? I think there are two elephants in the room here, which I think we're not really, I think, addressing here. Yeah. So if you take even
Civic, you need to put it on.
It's
not come on.
Yeah. So if you look at this chart, Center for Science and Environment, no better institution than to reflect on these things. I think there are two things completely missing from this. And this is not a
not at all.
But
this is part of the work.
Yeah. And something that I think Ashok touched upon is that one, the fact is we completely underprice energy broadly. And don't get me wrong here. I'm not someone who will say that some people should not have cheap and subsidized access to energy. I think, but if in the conversation we don't talk about this elephant in the room where energy is massively underpriced, and we know that many politicians, when they come to power, they say the first thing we promise is free power. That is not a political economy that's going to help us move forward as rapidly as we need to. So I think we need a conversation about how we price energy, and it comes in the form of power subsidies, water subsidies, all kinds of subsidies. I think we need to. And I want to emphasize, I'm not saying we should eliminate subsidies for the poor at all. I think, but we just don't have a conversation on how best to price energy. That's point number one. That's the elephant in the room. The second elephant in the room is, I think that the charts and the presentation showed that enforcement is a problem, right, in India, and there are a whole lots of reasons why it is a problem. I don't think India is any worse than most countries. But when you think about policy or change, is it enough to say, oh, but we must enforce better, knowing that this is going to be very difficult.
Good point.
Yeah. So we need to be much more creative about saying, given that these things are enforcement is going to be poor for very long, what are better ways around that? And I think So exhortations to enforce better, our pollution board should become better, etc., etc. I think they're not very convincing as ways forward. So I think these are the two elephants in the room, I think, which we need to think about much more carefully. How will change happen? I would say, let me talk about three ways in which change should happen, and they're not mutually exclusive, apart from the pricing issue. I think one very powerful agent for change, which I must say, congratulate Sunita and the Center for having done this in different areas, is to actually document the costs of not doing this. For example, I'm going to, my office produces the economic survey, which is going to come out in a few days' time. And we do talk about climate change and so on. And in the course of doing this, what I realized was how high the health costs of carbon are in India. Yeah. And so if we could, think, like someone who's in advertising, I don't know advertising at all, but how to, use those as, harping on, how change can happen. If we really drum on the social cost, the health cost, and it's quite high. It's, some estimates put it as high as something like $65 per ton of CO2. It's just, forget about the international thing, but just the domestic health costs of this. So we're underpricing our resources by that much because we're encouraging use, which actually kills people very significantly. So I think talking more about the costs of this, the local costs, I think, is one way of change. The second way I think change, which has been a little bit missing in this conversation, I know that Sunita has said very active on this, is that I think that given that India will need coal, and we can quibble about how much more or how much less, but the point is we have lots of coal, we have cheap coal, and it's going to be used, and it has to be used. So I think unless we green coal and clean coal, basically the arithmetic on climate change does not add up.
Yes.
I mean, the planet blows up, you can do whatever renewables you want. Of course, suddenly there could be some dramatic technology in storage and in solar power, and then it becomes. But on the horizon, that doesn't seem to be happening. So I think we need and this has to be an international effort at cleaning and greening coal. And here, I think that we have not, I think, paid enough attention to this. I think what is happening internationally is the world has become enamored with renewable energy, and for good reason. But what's happened is it's completely diverted and distracted attention from the need to make coal cleaner. We cannot invest in the technology on the road. We probably can't invest at all. We need a massive international effort, and we need to push that massive international effort to greening and cleaning coal. And this is the thought that I have. I wonder is our negotiating stance, is the way we deal with this internationally the most conducive way of putting pressure on people, on the international community, both international private sector and public sector, to invest much more in. I think we're losing that battle because everyone's getting enamored there. So that force for change, because if you get technological change in coal like you do in solar, those numbers which are still 30, 35, 40, 45 will shoot up. It will be a game changer, but we're far away from that. And I think we need to think internally carefully, because I don't think we've been very constructive or really had our strategic interests in mind. When we enter, I'm going to forward Sunita as well a little bit on the way we do business internationally. But the last point, and so change agent number one, highlighting the costs. Change agent number two, how do we get international attention, and massive resources into cleaning coal. And the third thing I think is that, given all these constraints, I think the way change is going to happen is exactly what we see this evening. A huge tribute to the Center for Science and Environment, because if you believe in bottoms-up change, it's by documenting these things, kind of an implicit naming and shaming, rewarding and shaming implicitly at the same time. I think that's a very powerful force for change, because this is change from the bottom up, and that's something that's very powerful. So in a sense, what this evening has been all about is a bit like the Dracula effect. You throw sunshine on something, and the problem gets cleaned to some extent. So I criticized Sunita, but I want to end by saying, massive congratulations for something like this, because really this is one powerful agent of change. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind. And it's not criticism. This is exactly what we needed to hear. So thank you very much. Dr. Saab, can I now ask you, and maybe from here itself, if you could give us, yes, absolutely, do it from here. So.
Sunita and friends here, it's a very significant function. This year, 2015, has been designated by the United Nations as the decade of sustainable development. In other words, we had a UN Millennium Development Goals the last 10 years, and now for the next 10 years, the emphasis on sustainable development. Sustainable development for a very long time was interpreted as good balance sheets. Your balance sheet was successful, income was good, and even today that is important. Not that the balance sheet is not important. But then gradually we started thinking of the other forms of sustainability, the environmental sustainability, and social sustainability. And in this particular case, we are dealing today with power, coal-based power. Both social sustainability is important, as well as environmental sustainability is very important. It was in the 6th Five-Year Plan, 1980-85, that we first introduced a chapter called Environmental Development. You go through it, you will find a great deal of emphasis on good ecology. The principle of good ecology is good business. Bad ecology is bad business over a period of time. In other words, those whom we have honored today, those who are sitting here, they are all leaders of what I call do ecology. You use the coal, you generate the power, at the same time, you show how it can be done much more sustainably. In other words, the data which Chandrabhushan presented on water and other uses of us clearly show that where there is a will, there is a way to do it much better. I think the Green Audit Program of CSE, headed by Dr. Sunita Narayan, is essentially intended as a very powerful educational tool, awakening tool, a role model tool. Those who have been honored here are role models for others. People can learn from them and so on. And I want not only CSE has not confined itself to power or coal, but also in terms of, for example, school. There's a green audit of schools. Because unless you start, we talk about demographic dividend in the country. So the majority of people are young people. And the way to start is the school. So the green audit methodologies that are applied to education, that are applied to coal, that are applied to power, or that are applied to steel. One of the early ones was paper. Paper again, what was shown here, that some of them were dependent upon purely social forestry. They didn't take up the power of trees. So I congratulate Sunita, Chandrabhushan, and all of their colleagues who have been involved in this green audit. They have been perfecting the methodology, and the fact that you all accept the methodology, that you all accept that whatever has been stated, it has its roots in credible evidence, it's an evidence-based assessment which has been done. I want to congratulate them and thank them. I'm very privileged to be associated with this wonderful organization. Small in size, but great in its impact. Very great in its impact. And I therefore hope that all of you will become do ecologists. Do your business. We don't want, the country wants to progress economically. Not a question of ecology doesn't mean don't ecology. Don't ecologies are all there sometimes. Certain things we should not do also. But what we need in our country is do ecology. How to do things right rather than not to do it at all. We need accelerated economic progress. I remember there's a saying in Japanese which says that if you want to make progress, take power to the people, and not for political power, but this real power is what we are discussing today. Take power to the people, and I think that's very important, and that's probably why Japan and others have progressed so much. So may I congratulate once again the role models whose work has been honored, and also Chandra Bhushan, Sunita, and the colleagues who have started this green audit, and our two speakers here who brought out very important facts about this case. I myself am happy to see gradually the country is becoming environmentally conscious. As I said, the three dimensions of sustainability, which are important in the sustainable development again. Social sustainability has also become very important. The industry and any of us will have to be very, very conscious of the fact that in a democratic society, social sustainability is important. At the same time, the environmental sustainability, the starting point in the plan document, not that we didn't realize its importance before, but the 6-5-year plan, if you want to refresh your memory, can go through it. Environmental development emphasizes a lot the importance of ensuring that all development is environmentally sustainable. Environmental sustainability means a time dimension of infinity. In the case of economics, we give depreciation. Here we can only give appreciation. And gradually those who have been honored today should show, they have shown how to save water and so on, but they should also show that how coal-based power can become a blessing that occurs. Congratulations and all the best to the leaders of this industry. We hope that your example will be multiplied, and during this decade of sustainable development, India will show the world how to really progress through a do ecology approach to development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saab, and thank you, everyone. I want to, before we conclude this program, I wanted to raise a few issues and also respond a little bit to what both Arvind as well as Mr. Lavasa and CD said, and also explain to all of you what we will be doing now in terms of the agenda forward. So, give you a sense of where we will be taking it. I think the points that Arvind you raised are very critical. Clearly, this country has to have the issue of pricing sorted out. And we have no doubt, and CSE is one institution which actually puts energy access ahead sometimes of all goals, even of climate change, because we strongly believe that energy poverty is completely unacceptable and something that we all agree with it. I don't need to keep saying it, but I just want to say that for us that means a lot. And but on the other hand, it also is very clear that the costs of environmental damage will also have to be paid. And you very correctly said that there is an issue of the costs of environmental mismanagement. There is a pollution cost, and pollution cost is something that we need to think about very carefully. Chandra Bhushan, heads also the laboratory that we have at CSE. And one of the things that we had done a few years ago was to look at mercury poisoning in Singrauli area, Sonbhadra. And honestly, we take a lot of pride at CSE that when we do something, we're like a dog with a bone. We don't give up, and we push and we push and we push and we get change. And that's the way we are that's our DNA. But when we looked at Sonbhadra, when we looked at Singrauli, I say to you today, and I say it in front of all of you, it's one area that I say with great grief, we have been able to do nothing to make a difference. We saw mercury poisoning there. We saw the fact that we had higher levels of mercury in the hair, in the blood of the people we tested, and yet we could make no difference. And the reason was very clear, was that the people who were suffering the cost of that were not the people who were getting power. I get power from Singrauli. I don't pay the cost of that.
And people who live in Singrauli and Sonbhadra are the people who are paying the cost of it. And there are two things that come out of this learning for us is one, that we will have to internalize environmental cost. We cannot externalize such environmental cost anymore. I don't know whether that will mean that the cost of power will go up necessarily. CB is very confident that it will not go up in our calculations. But even if it goes up, I think that's a cost we have to learn to pay. That does mean that we will also have to look at affordable power on the other hand, and therefore look at where are the other inefficiencies in the power sector that we need to reduce. Quite clearly, the one inefficiency that we should not try and discount is environment. But what we should look at is whether the transmission losses can be reduced, whether the grid can be made more efficient, whether we can work at higher PLF. What can we do to make the power sector more affordable? Because there is no doubt this country needs affordable power. There are huge numbers of people who cannot even afford the price that is paid for power today, and the cheapest of power, which is coal today. So we need to do something, we need to do it aggressively, but I would argue, and I think you will agree with me, that the cost of environment cannot be discounted. We have to pay that price. That also means that we need to think through what then will be, and you very clearly challenged us, and I think it's a very important question you have raised. You know, don't just tell me enforcement is to be improved. Tell me how. And I think that is a challenge in front of this country. We cannot move away from it. And I know Mr. Lavasa is working on this. CSE spends a lot of his effort right now thinking about how do we improve enforcement. Because it is clear that the last decade of environmental management has focused too much on clearances, whether we should give or not, and too little on monitoring and enforcement. But what is that enforcement system in which we have boots on the ground, but we also have online systems, and we have every other way in which you have self-disclosure, you have credible self-disclosure, because even today, if you look at it, everything is self-disclosure, is self-rating, because most pollution control boards don't have the capacity to actually go and measure, and every company, whether it's thermal power or anything else, does a third-party check on its effluents, its air pollution, and that report is given to the Pollution Control Board. So in some senses, you already have a self-rating system or a self-measurement system, and that's not working. So we need better systems, and I promise you, Arvind, it's an area we are very, very convinced we need to work on, and I assure all of you in this room that it is an area we will continue to work put in enormous thinking and work with all of you to find how then is this change going to come in India, so that not only do we have the standards, but also we have the better enforcement. But related to this is the issue that we are thinking more and more, and the power sector has helped us to think about it. When I visited Bajbaj, one of the things that hit me was that Bajbaj actually cannot do anything wrong because it is located within a fairly congested area of West Bengal. And West Bengal, we know, is in any case a rather difficult place for right reasons. And if they were to do much more pollution or go and throw fly ash somewhere, somebody is going to come and close down their plant. Okay? Now, it is also making us change the concept of what is NIMBY, not in my backyard. And what has happened in the environmental movement has been that we have moved thermal power plants from each one of our backyards, because we are rich and powerful, to the backyards of very poor people. And in our rating, we have found that the maximum, the plants which are lowest on the list, are actually plants located where the most powerless people of this country live. And I think that actually has to change. Powerless in the sense of not only they don't have electricity, that is also the case, but also powerless in terms of just having the capacity to fight, to scream, to ask for change. So maybe we do need power plants in my backyard, in your backyard, because we have the power to insist that our backyard is kept clean, rather than moving it. And this is a change in the way. I mean, if you look at environmental management in India, in Delhi, we removed the mines around Delhi because we said Bhatti mine should go from Delhi. it moved to Haryana. Now from Haryana, it is moving to Rajasthan. We are moving it further and further away because we don't want to deal with it. Yesterday, we did a press conference on the new, on an agenda for clean air for the new government of Delhi. And one of the points that we made was, we have made a mistake in Delhi. We moved the polluting units of Delhi from Delhi to Ghaziabad. But they're in Ghaziabad. They're the same airshed of Delhi. The pollution of Ghaziabad comes into Delhi. So should we not be thinking more imaginatively? That's also part of the enforcement question. Have it in the backyard of more powerful people and make them monitors so that they can actually keep pollution in check as well. So these are big learnings that are coming out of this sector. And the last learning that has come out, and I think that's also something I think Arvind has challenged us, and I have to confess to him that we were very worried about taking on this sector. I have to say, as environmentalists, we're part of a community which is actually saying no to coal. Okay? And as you know, the world has a large disinvestment movement continuing right now, where the call is that people should move out of coal. The question that we had at CSE was that should we join the disinvestment movement, knowing the fact that India will remain a coal-dependent country, and even as we push renewables, it will have coal, or should we talk seriously about what to do to clean up? And I think that is a difficult path for most environmental groups to take. I have extraordinary confidence in Chandrabhushan to make sure that he will do it so rigorously that we will be able to keep it absolutely, we'll be sure about our facts. And that's why we actually moved on this. And it's taken us time to build the confidence. I think now we do plan, and I hope we will keep you informed. The next task for the team is to call a Future of Coal conference sometime in April, where we are hoping to get countries from China, South Africa also together, and Indonesia, and talk about this issue openly and squarely. Where does the roadmap for the future lie? And what do we do to improve standards? It is very clear, and I think all of you will agree based on our findings, that we do need coal. Even as environmentalists, we may wish not to, we will have coal, but we cannot have coal clean up. And that roadmap for reform, for cleaning up, is something that we promise you we will push. And we hope that we will not fight you, but that you will work with us to get success in this area. So finally, let me thank the team at CSE, which has put in extraordinary work, and I hope you will join me in giving a hand. I will sponsor Sangeeta, Sai, Sanjeev, Priyavat is the man who actually led this as the coordinator. And I have with us two members of our staff, Dr. Sen Gupta, Mr. Bakhar, please stand up. Without you, this meeting could not have been possible. So thank you very much, everyone. And tea is outside. Please don't leave without having tea with us. And again, thank you very much for coming. This means a lot to us. Thank you.
Really, thank you. Lovely.
Hello. There are a number of companies who participated, and we want to appreciate their participation. The certificates for that, and obviously the plans not call us, not money. Please collect